to see this.
All right. There it is. The president saying he has made a decision about whether to pull out of the Iran deal, has not revealed it. He said he'll let us know when he wants to. Joining us now to discuss that and a lot more is the president's national security advisor, H.R. Mcmaster. Sir, pleasure to have you on the show.
Hey, thanks.
Thank you for your service to the country.
Oh, it's a privilege.
So,
Glad to be here.
do you, Rex Tillerson, Secretary of State, was surprised to hear that the president said that he had made a decision. Did you know that the president had made a decision?
Sure, we've all been involved in lengthy discussions, not just about the Iran deal, but really what to do about Iran's destabilizing behavior broadly. The potential of a nuclear program, the need to block all paths to a nuclear weapon for Iran, but their ballistic missile program, things not covered under this incomplete deal, and really what they've done to perpetuate violence across the Middle East with support for terrorist organizations, proxy forces, propping up this murderous Assad regime, causing problems and enmeshing people in conflict in Yemen, subverting Iraq. And so we've taken a holistic look at this. I think what's different about the president's approach is that he didn't look just at the Iran deal. He placed his decision on the Iran deal in broad context of how we protect American citizens, American interests, how we protect our allies and partners from Iran's broad range of destabilizing behavior.
Understood. Two questions. One, what is the decision? Do you know?
I know what the decision is, but when the president reveals that, when he talks about it, he'll place it in context of the broader approach to Iran and what we have to do as a nation to protect our people, but what we have to do with our allies and partners to really prevent Iran from continuing this very destabilizing behavior, the threat to Israel, the seeding, the flow of these very destructive weapons through this clandestine network they've set up, from Gaza to Lebanon to Syria to Yemen and Iraq.
Dangling it the way the president did is good showmanship, perhaps, but it can also be destabilizing. You had Rouhani from Iran come out and say this deal is non-negotiable. You had Khomeini, understood he's a religious leader. He is prone more towards extreme views. He says that the president is speaking out of desperation and anger. The central focus is, I hear everything you said about what Iran is doing, and we've heard it from others as well. That is not what this deal was about. As you well know, this was about controlling, containing as best you can, looking at the missile program, the nuclear development program. Why mess with that deal in the interest of these outside issues?
Well, I think the main reason is the deal is fundamentally flawed. I mean, as the president said, he called it the worst deal of all time. It gave the Iranian regime all the benefits up front. And then the incompleteness of the deal, the flaws of the deal, the sunset clause that could really give this regime, who's not trustworthy, obviously, cover to advance a nuclear program and then have this threshold capability.
But you had the
while
six
they're
nations
developing missiles which lie outside the
Understood.
program.
But you have a this and that issue here. And you have your 6 nation allies, okay, including the U.S. This was the best deal they thought they could get. By most accounts, this has stopped, slowed, and somehow, in some way, positively influenced their development capabilities. And we haven't heard you guys, Rex Tillerson or others, question that reality. But if this was the best deal they thought they could get, and you have outside concerns, why not deal with those separately? Cut a different deal about what Iran is doing elsewhere, assuming you have leverage. But if you mess with this, you may destabilize the entire situation, according to the Iranians.
Well, what's happened is this deal has had the exact opposite in terms of what the expectations were, the effect of that deal. And Iran is continuing missile development that could be paired with the nuclear program later. The regime has not just walked up to the line, but crossed the line, spinning too many centrifuges, too much heavy water. And so while the IAEA, the monitoring body, has called them out on it and they've corrected some of this, how do you trust this regime to do it? So much more rigorous enforcement is needed. The need to address this fundamental flaw of the sunset clause, the need to address other capabilities that could then threaten the world from this autocratic, theocratic regime in Iran, such as the missile program. So these are the things that we have to work on together, but in the context of an overall Iran strategy, because Iran is destabilizing not just the Middle East, but poses a broader threat. Iran is perpetuating this humanitarian and political crisis in the Middle East.
I don't think the argument is so much about what Iran does that is negative. It's about how to approach it, because in this move, potentially, you destabilize a second situation, which is North Korea, because arguably what we've been hearing from most of you guys when the president isn't being more inflammatory with his rhetoric is, we'll get them to the table. We'll make a deal. Why would North Korea make a deal with people who are backing out of a deal with somebody else involving nuclear capabilities? Doesn't it compromise your efforts there?
No, I don't think so at all. In fact, I think it strengthens our efforts with North Korea, because North Korea knows this president is not going to repeat the failed strategies of the past.
But help us understand how North Korea seeing you back out of a deal with 6 nations involved helps.
Well, what's happened is North Korea has seen us walk into deals with the North Korean regime, which it then breaks immediately. So the pattern in the past with North Korea was to engage in long, drawn-out talks, lock in wherever they had gotten with their missile program, their nuclear program as a new normal, and then a weak deals developed, which then North Korea immediately breaks. So we're out of time now in North Korea, so we can't take that approach anymore. And what the president's been able to do is marshal the broad community of nations who recognize that we must work together urgently on this problem. And so you've seen the very strong sanctions, 215-0 votes in the Security Council. Now the move to enforce those sanctions and do more. The president will make an important announcement today about the continuation of our efforts to resolve this problem with North Korea short of war. And he'll make that announcement as he meets with our very close allies, South Korea and Japan.
Were you one of the authors of Rocket Man as a way to describe Kim Jong-un? Do you think that kind of rhetoric helps?
Well, it's an accurate term. I mean, this is someone who has compromised everything for his nation in the pursuit of this capabilities. He is disadvantaging his own people every day by investing, is what the president said, a suicide mission. This is not going to keep his people safer. It puts them on a path to devastation.
Understood, but does the words matter edict apply here, that you talk to a hothead who's very unstable in an inflammatory way? Is that helpful?
Well, it got everybody's attention, right? And we need to get everybody's attention. We cannot take the same approach we've been taking on North Korea. It is really, really an urgent problem now.
So there's talk and then there's action. You have been talking about something called preventative military action, okay, which is different than preemptive. And this isn't, right. I'm not trying to get big brain on this. It matters to the American people.
Yes.
Preemptive is, they're getting ready to do something to us, and we can see it. We have to do something first, recognized in international law as a reasonable potential basis for act. Preventative is not. You've been using the word preventative. What do you mean by that? What would you do with military force?
Well, preventive means that you think that the threat is so grave and it is so imminent that you have to act to prevent that threat to the American people.
That's preemptive.
To our allies. No, preemptive is if you see an imminent threat. So, for example, the lining up of missiles that could be targeted. And this is a leader who said and his people have said he is going to target the U.S.
Understood.
U.S. A great threat to our great ally Japan, and obviously South Korea, which lives really under the gun of this regime.
And about 50,000 U.S. servicemen and women and their families.
Right. And so what we owe the president is options. What we have to do is help define with our great intelligence community, along with our South Korean allies, with our Japanese allies, to define these decision points. Because there may be some really, really tough choices. Now, everybody wants to resolve this short of military conflict. Everybody knows how costly that could be, how unpredictable it is once you begin this interaction, a military interaction, with this kind of a regime.
So why do we talk about it so much?
Because we have to have these options on the table.
Do we have options?
Yes, we do have options. Certainly we have options.
Do you think one of them would be shooting down one of these missiles?
It could be. There are a broad range of options that we have available. We have tremendous military capability, along with our allies. We practice that capability. We have our forces at a very high level of readiness and an increasing level of readiness for this problem. But what the president has done is he has directed us to integrate what we're doing diplomatically, what we're doing economically and with sanctions, with our plans and what we're prepared to do militarily. If you divorce what you're prepared to do militarily from your diplomacy is not going to be effective.
Right. But at the same time, the talk about we'll totally destroy, look, we get the idea of muscular rhetoric. We get it. But you are dealing with a madman. And don't all roads of any kind of military action lead to great vulnerability for 10 million people in Seoul and all of those American lives on the DMZ?
Oh, of course they do. Every time we talk about this, the president first talks about the South Korean people and the importance of us solving this problem in a way that doesn't involve increased risk to our great allies there. But the president's rhetoric was completely appropriate, because what's even more dangerous, if there's a lack of clarity. Previous presidents, as you know, have made very similar statements, and the clause is that if North Korea attacks, if North Korea takes these provocative actions, we may not have a choice.
So that's the same standard that it's always been. You haven't changed the line.
It is no, but the line, it's much more dangerous than ever, though.
Understood.
Because of the way this program has progressed over the years.
What they're doing,
and how previous agreements have failed. What
they're doing has changed, but you're saying our standard, the United States standard for military action, has remained the same in terms of what you'd have to perceive as threat.
Well, and what we have to do at this point is provide even more options. We have to work harder at making sure we're ready for any eventuality. I mean, this is a nation that poses a grave threat to the world, right? If a missile can reach the United States, it can reach other nations as well.
Understood.
If the non-proliferation regime, which means preventing other nations from getting nuclear weapons in a way that could destabilize the world, if that breaks down, if you have Japan really arming, if you have South Korea arming at a higher level, which they're doing, they have to, that's destabilizing to the region, to the world, and it's a threat to all nations. And so the president has called on all leaders, our allies and others, including China, Russia, others, to do more.
Understood. The Russia investigation. I've been hearing you this morning saying you're focused on other things, but it is a national security issue, that which Russia was doing to impede our election. It just is, by definition. What do you feel about the implications of what Russia did, and do you endorse what the special counsel is doing?
Well, what we have done for the president is we have developed a strategy for coping with Russia, and Secretary Tillerson is in the lead on this. And essentially what we have to do with Russia is three things. We have to confront their destabilizing behavior. The president's going to meet with President Poroshenko of Ukraine today, whose sovereignty has been threatened and is under threat today from Russia. The second thing that we have to do is we want to deter conflict with Russia, right? This is a nuclear-armed nation. We had the long Cold War with the Soviet Union. We want to deter further conflicts in areas where we are interacting with Russia. We have to make sure that we keep that in mind as well. But the third thing we want to do is find areas of cooperation where we can work together in our mutual interests. What we've seen in recent years is Russia does reflexively anything they can to disrupt the United States' interests, to disrupt the interests of our allies. That's really silly, okay? We should be able to work together in some key areas. Secretary Tillerson, I think, has done a magnificent job in finding some areas to cooperate within Syria, for example, to address that humanitarian catastrophe there in a way that's consistent with our long-term interests, and really denying Iran this so-called land bridge that could put an Iranian proxy army on the border of Israel. I mean, there are big, big issues that we could use Russia's help. We saw the story maybe today about how Russia might be transshipping to North Korea. That's not in their interest. So we have to find these areas of cooperation with Russia, even as we confront their destabilizing behavior.
And just to be clear on the record there, I want you to have the opportunity for this. The questions about what they did, who might have helped them, and how to stop it, you believe those are all legitimate questions for us to look at?
Of course, and so does the president.
He's been in different positions on that issue, but I want you on the record on it. Thank you very much for being with us, sir.
Thanks, Chris. Great to be with you.
Appreciate it. You're always welcome here on New Day to talk about what matters to the American people.
Thanks, Chris.
All right.